opposite direction for anyone who wants to do the long option this afternoon. And that includes coming all the way down to the ship and starting a new loop. Part of the loop is this road right here we're doing now. So it is pretty much straight up. It's 10 miles. Out of those 10, about 6 miles are going up, and the next 4 are coming down. So it's a lollipop option. It's just to a viewpoint. I'll give you a little more detail in a minute, but this is just so you have more or less of an idea of what the grade is for the long option. Now, about today. The most exciting day of the week, at least for me. Probably shouldn't say that on day 3, kind of hinders all the remaining days, but I think it's worth what I'm saying. Well, right now, we are right in the middle of the wine producing Douro. So when we think about Douro in Portugal, and most likely if you put it on Google, the first couple of pictures that you'll see, the postcard kind of pictures, are from exactly this valley. This one we are right now, it's a side valley of the Douro. It's the Pinhão valley, so because of the Pinhão river, that at this point here in the bottom of the valley, it's not much more than just a small stream, but it goes up and opens up to the bridge we crossed this morning. So all of this area is known for the wine production. The port all comes from here, from this area, and so the terraces that are so traditional from the Douro start right here. You can see the landscape around us is already all terrace. There's a really nice expression that about the Douro, that is, God made the river, man made the Douro. Because all of this, everything we see now, was all done by man. So it was all carved into the side. Now some of the newer ones, like the one we see here on your left, it is a little recent. We saw the beginning of this terrace a couple of years ago, and obviously this one was built with bulldozers and machinery. The older ones that we'll see throughout the morning, and some of the ones we'll see tomorrow afternoon for lunch, those were all done by hand. So it is, everything around here is very labor intensive. And we are, like I said, in the heart of the Douro. And what does that mean? It means that to be considered a DOC, so DOC is Control Origin Demarcated, how do you translate that? Demarcated area of origin. So it is like you see that in cheeses or in Chianti wine or champagne wine. So to be considered a wine, a port wine first of all, the sweet wine we've been having for dessert, or even just a regular wine from the DOC of the Douro, has to come from an area that is designed in a map. So this area is known, so if you produce anything outside of this area, even if you follow all the remaining rules, and whatever the rules are regarding table wine or port, if you do it outside of this demarcated area, it's no longer considered, no longer have the stamp of approval. And so there's an institute, the Institute of Port Wine, and they are the ones who approve if a wine is a port or not. Because, for example, in California, there are a couple of producers producing exactly the same wine as we do here in the Douro. They use the same grapes, the terroir, the climate, the landscape is similar, and so everything, they follow all the rules. Because it's not from the Douro region, cannot be considered port. So it's just like champagne. I don't know the name of the producer. I know a guest of ours a couple of years ago brought us a bottle to try. In my ignorant palate, I was just like, this is Douro, this is port wine. But obviously, for the Institute of Port Wine, as long as it's not from here, no longer qualifies to be considered a port. And so it's just like champagne in France, you can do champagne wherever you want in the world. If it's not from Champagne, cannot get the name of champagne. Bubbly wine, whatever you want to call it, but it's not champagne. The same thing with port. And so that is also what keeps some of the authenticity of the wine and so specific from here. It's that they use, and the rules are really exhaustive from the grapes they use. Port wine is always a mix of different grapes, so it's not, you don't have a single variety port. So the aging process changes, but I'll leave all of that nice information for the tour this afternoon. But this is just an idea. Everything you see around here, all of these terraces, they are still all harvested by hand. So everything is, because there's no way you can put a machine to harvest on a lot of these terraces. Up top where we're going, there's some places where, yes, they use machines, the ones that shake the vine and suck the grapes. In this case, it's just all done by hand. Someone is cutting and putting them in buckets, someone is carrying the buckets all the way to the end of the row, where someone in a pickup or something like that will pick it up and drive it to the top of the hill. So, very labor intensive. If you want to visit this area in September, even the valley smells like wine. And this seems like just conversation. This is something I would say, but it's true because there are so many trucks going up and down the valley every day. Just a little bit of wine or grapes that fall to the floor will release this aroma of wine, so it's lovely. So that's the beginning of our day. It's vineyards. But we continue climbing all the way to 600 meters of elevation above sea level. And when we get there, we get to the town of Favaios. Now, Favaios in Portugal is known as a nice aperitif kind of wine. It's of a Muscat grape. There are two regions in Portugal for Muscat. The first one is south of Lisbon, where some of you might go in the next couple of days, in the area of Rábida and Setúbal. And there is this area over here that they use a Muscat white grape. And so it's this similar system of aging to the port. So you start the fermentation, 3 days into the fermentation, you had alcohol, and that is able to preserve the sugars, the natural sugars of the grape, and also increase the alcohol content significantly. So Favaios wine has been produced in this area for hundreds of years at least. There is records of this being done in the 16th century in the Favaios area. The same kind of wine, obviously, not with the same level of detail and attention to the detail, but it has been done here. So much so that most of the valley that kind of go around the valley all the way to lunch. And if you look to your left now, close to the antenna you see on the top, that's very close to where we'll have lunch this afternoon. And so we're just going a horseshoe shape around the valley. And we kind of hit a couple of important towns along the way. All of these towns belong to a network of the wine-producing villages. And all of these villages can date back some history to wine producing for several centuries and bread making. So they're still very traditional. They're trying to keep all of the traditions alive. We'll visit as soon as we arrive to Favaios a bakery that still works in a very old fashion. They still do all the everything by hand. It's still a fire oven, so we'll still get to see that in Favaios once we start. And then throughout the morning we'll pass through a couple of other towns. Douro also belongs to one of these towns, and then the town where we have lunch, another one of these towns that belongs to this network of these historical villages that have been producing wine for several centuries. Now, this day, I love this day so much because we kind of wrap up Portuguese history all in one around here. The town where we, just before lunch, where we pass, it's Sabrosa, and doesn't ring a bell for anyone. I know that, not even for Portuguese people. But it is the home, the birthplace of Magellan. So the Portuguese the explorer, supposedly the first man circumnavigating the world, although not really. He died in the Philippines before he finished the voyage, and so it was one of his second in command that was truly the first man, or the first crew circumnavigating the world. But he got all the credits, although he died before he finished the adventure. But he was born in a small little town around here. And so keep in mind that he was born, people estimate, in the 1480, 1470s. And so if now this is isolated, if now the river is navigable and it still takes a long time to get to Porto, if now there are highways and you're still at least 2 hours from Porto, imagine what it was in the 15th century to be born in a small little town and ended up going to Lisbon. Obviously, he was from low noble families. Low noble families, was that people? Yeah? Well, not a very important family, but still a noble family. And he went to Lisbon to help to be one of the aides, and he learned the art of sailing there. And he ended up became a sailor. And obviously, we don't tell that part. He was not working for the Portuguese crown at the time. He was working for the Spanish crown. So the Spanish crown was the one sponsoring his armada to try to go around the world in 1519. And we don't tell that part. We just say that he was from our side of the border. Doesn't matter who's paying. It's still us. The discoveries, the period of the discoveries has a lot of that. Of private entrepreneurs being sponsored from different crowns all over the world. So we can go with that with Columbus, Vasco da Gama. All of them have interesting background history to tell. And so this kind of tells you the history of the region we are going to visit today. So it's wine, it's a little bit of the discoveries, it's more wine, and we finish the day in a winery. So definitely wine is the theme for today, and also this beautiful landscape. Now, all this being said, let's get on to the nitty-gritty and get all the details for the bike ride. Just get my notes before I forget any important details. And so we start in the town of Provaios. No day is downhill, like you know, but we once again start the morning, the first half, just trending down all the way to kilometer 10. About kilometer 10, that's when we start having the first climbs. And so from then on is up and down all the way to lunch. Halfway through the climb, a little over halfway, we'll have a support stop with some nice things for you to try, some nice goodies for you to enjoy. And that puts the morning at 25 miles, so 40 kilometers, 25 miles. Just before lunch, there are two things to pay attention to. First of all, once you see that you're getting closer to the final mark, to the 40 kilometer mark on your GPS, start paying attention, because you'll be at the top of the hill and you'll have the chance of continuing going down on the same road you are, or going up on the road to the right. Obviously, we have to take the road to the right that goes up the hill, and no one wants to do that. You're coming with some speed, so just be careful, because you don't want to come up again from the wrong side. We'll try to have a van or a biker there, but it's not guaranteed we are able to catch up with you guys on time. So make sure that when you get to the end, if you see a big climb on your right, a straight shot to the top of the hill, you don't forget to take that one. It's a steep climb, but it's a short one. It's less than a kilometer, and we get to the town of Fruzendo right at the top of the mountain, and then we'll have lunch there with Graça. Graça is the owner of Papas Zaid, small little restaurant where we go. Now, Graça is one of the humblest people I know. She has been featured in the Washington Post, the New York Times, in their travel edition. She had no idea she was being featured on the newspaper. It was a neighbor that came around and said, "Hey, do you know that you showed up on an American newspaper?" She had no idea. She still has the scraps of it, because the reporter was around, had lunch there, loved the lunch, took a picture, wrote a couple of notes about her place, never told her anything, so she didn't know. And so this just highlights how good the food is. It's good Portuguese food, a big spread of a little bit of everything. Once again, for anyone who has food restrictions, if you're not sure, just ask us. Graça is really good at accommodating all of our requests, so she will have different options for every single person. And so that is something to look forward for sure. And then after lunch, we'll already be at the top of the hill, and we have a quick downhill of 11 kilometers, 7 miles, all the way down to the ship. So we just need to climb a little bit to leave town, and then from there, we just zigzag our way back to the ship, and we'll be going on the other side of the valley. And this view, there are several viewpoints along the way. Take your time to stop at the viewpoints. The views in the Douro are beautiful everywhere, but I feel that this section, particularly halfway through the descent, when we start seeing the Douro at the bottom and you see the ship, and it's just a wonderful picture to send back home, and just soak it in, soak that part. And so this is the official ride finishes up here. So 40 kilometers in the morning, 11 kilometers to get back to the ship. For anyone who wants, there's a long option that I mentioned in the beginning, just a big lollipop, starts from the ship. It's a big loop, comes to the top, loops around the viewpoint and comes down. Now the viewpoint unfortunately is under construction right now. You still get to see the view from up there, but the viewpoint, the last couple 100 meters to the viewpoint are just in the middle of construction. So if you do that, just keep that in mind, that you might have to navigate a little bit to a construction area.